West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy with Chef Justice Putnam. Netrootsradio.com.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
Can't think of anyone better to talk to me more about this than former U.S. Attorney General Eric Holder, who served under President Barack Obama. He's now the chair of the National Democratic Redistricting Committee, and he's the author of our Unfinished March. Thank you so much for joining me here today. And I wanted to start with the bigger picture here. I mean, you have been at the highest levels of the judicial system for decades, but you may even be exhausted. I'm exhausted of all of this. Why does it matter to people to pay attention? Why should they?
Well, I think we have to pull back here. This is not only an attack, as you've described it, on the judicial system. It's actually a part of a larger piece, which is an attack on our democracy. The judicial system is one of the things that really distinguishes the United States and the American experiment from other governments. If you go after the judicial system, you are in essence going at the foundation of our country, of our democracy. And that is something I think too many Republicans are apparently willing to do, following the president, attacking our democracy. Every generation of Americans has been called upon to defend democracy, whether it is at Gettysburg or in Omaha Beach during World War II, from Selma to Montgomery. We have to defend our democracy in this moment, not be the first generation to fail to defend our democracy. And that means standing up for people like Alvin Bragg and these other prosecutors who are simply doing their jobs.
And I wanted to ask you about the Manhattan District Attorney. I mean, reportedly hundreds of threats against him. You've sat in versions of his roles over the course of your career. How damaging and how dangerous are these threats that are out there against him and have been building over the past several days?
Well, they obviously are dangerous because they can activate people who are outside of the system, who are actually outside the ambit of what the deputy attorney, what the district attorney is actually doing. It's going to have no impact within the district attorney's office.
He's not watching it himself.
Watch it, have some degree of understanding of it. Same thing with regard to Jack Smith and Merrick Garland at the Justice Department. That's not going to impact what it is that they're doing, but it can activate people outside of the process. You know, the lone wolves who will perhaps get, for whatever reason, feel that what Donald Trump is saying is actually real and then act upon it. That's the real danger.
Is the people who are watching now, because of January 6th, when Donald Trump started escalating his rhetoric, I was a little afraid. I'm sure a lot of people out there were. You oversaw law enforcement. How do they watch all of these threats, these building threats, what's happening online? What are they watching right now?
Well, insecurity goes up. You start to increase the interactions that you have with joint terrorism task forces. You start interacting more with state and local authorities, looking for intelligence, trying to find ways in which you can determine whether or not there are actual threats, actionable threats that you need to be concerned about, and then deploying resources to deal with them.
So they're going to watch it closely. And more so, do you think, because of January 6th?
Sure. I mean, we have to learn from January the 6th, and we can't forget not only this, that he mentioned January 6th, he did this at Waco.
Yeah.
You know, 30 years or so after the Waco debacle there, where a bunch of people died, including, I think, 20 ATF agents. And so there's a whole bunch of things that happened in connection, a whole bunch of things you have to worry about in connection with what the former president did.
Now, when I saw that photo last night, my brother-in-law got married. I came home, I was looking at the coverage, And I almost thought I was seeing something fake. Donald Trump sitting there with footage of the January 6th insurrection behind him. If you're Jack Smith, do you watch that? Do you look at it? How do you consume that? Does it matter?
Yeah, doesn't matter. You bring cases, as the Attorney General said, without any basis of fear or favor. You have to look at the facts, look at the law, apply those things, and then hold people accountable. If you don't hold people accountable in connection with January the 6th, that means at all levels, it is an indication to people in the future that they can do something like that and get away with it.
So even though Donald Trump seemed to double down on something he is under investigation for, it doesn't factor in?
No, I mean, that's his MO. I mean, that's what he does. He tries to delay, he tries to intimidate, but he's run up against forces now that are not going to be intimidated. The United States Department of Justice, the Manhattan DA's office, the Fulton County DA's office, these are offices that are steeped in these kinds of things and will know how to respond, I think, appropriately.
I wanted to ask you, there was another letter, a second letter here. I read it last night, highlighted it. I'm a little bit of a nerd. That was sent by a bunch of Republican leaders in Congress, Jim Jordan being one of them, the chairman of the House Judiciary Committee. And they seem to kind of double down on both their request for documents and information on this state or this Manhattan DA case. And they also seem to suggest that they wanted to remove former presidents from being able to be prosecuted at all. Or that's kind of how I read it. I'm not a lawyer. Tell us a little bit about how uncommon this is, or what is is there ever a scenario where Congress should be seeking information from an ongoing state, local investigation?
I know of no instance where you've seen Congress asking about a state or local prosecution. They frequently will ask questions about federal prosecutions, and even those, they get the back of the hand to those, because you don't talk about ongoing investigations. The notion that, Jim Jordan, who ignored a subpoena to testify in the January 6th investigation, would now have the temerity to try to inject himself into a state local prosecution. It is the height of hypocrisy, and it'll be something that I'm sure that the DA will respond to. My guess would be it will be a much shorter response than the letter that actually was sent to him. It's not the kind of thing, you don't ignore it, because you should give the body, Congress, some degree of respect, but you're not going to take it seriously.
And do they have any authority to seek this information? It's very uncommon. But
no, I mean, what's the basis? I mean, Congress can do these things on the basis of enacting legislation. That's what the purpose of oversight is. What legislation are you going to enact that's going to have an impact on a state or local authority? Zero.
Now, I wanted to ask you also about Evan Corcoran, because he is, and this is just, I'm thinking of the questions my mother-in-law, my friends ask me. So he, this week, had to testify and there was a loss of attorney-client privilege here, where the conversations that he was having with Trump about these documents we've all heard so much about, no longer was he unable to talk about them. How significant is that?
Oh, it's extremely significant, and it's extremely rare. The question is, who ultimately
Do you know of other cases?
There have been instances where you had to pierce the attorney-client privilege, but that's something that happens only in rare instances. And the ultimate question there is, who made the determination to tell federal authorities that all the documents that had been in the possession of the former president had actually been turned over? Is that something that the lawyers came up with, or is that something that the lawyers said at the direction of the former president? That's why you want to put Evan Corcoran in the grand jury. That's why you want to question him.
And what could they learn from this? You're not in it, but what kind of information could come out of their conversation?
Well, you could learn the answer to the ultimate question. If the ultimate answer from, and this is just hypothetical now, if Donald Trump told Evan Corcoran, there are no other documents, I want you to tell federal authorities that there are no other documents, and Evan Corcoran tells the young woman who actually put that letter together, then there is criminal liability on the part of the former president. And so if I'm Jack Smith, I want to know the answer to that question.
That could be the question. Now, I wanted to bring up, I share your mutual obsession with the Wisconsin State Supreme Court race, which is coming up early next month. If people haven't heard of it, They should pay attention. To me, it's the most important race happening this year. So tell us a little bit about the impact of that, the importance, and what the outcome could mean.
I think it's the most important race in 2023.
Agree.
I totally agree with you there. The Wisconsin Supreme Court, Wisconsin has probably now the most gerrymandered state legislature in the country. It's a 50-50 state. Democrats have only about 35% of the state legislature, and that's strictly as a result of the way in which the lines were drawn. It's unbelievably gerrymandered. The Supreme Court in Wisconsin would have the opportunity, if a lawsuit were brought, to decide whether or not those lines as drawn were consistent with the Constitution of Wisconsin. But beyond that, there are the reproductive component to this case as well. There's an 1849 statute from Wisconsin that bars abortion in all instances, and the Supreme Court of Wisconsin is going to have to make a determination about whether or not that is constitutional. This race will decide whether or not you have a pro-progressive Supreme Court or a pro-conservative Supreme Court. It's 4-3 now in favor of the conservatives. If Judge Janet Protasiewicz wins, it would be 4-3 for progressives.
That sounds pretty significant.
It's extremely significant.
And how quickly could that all happen? Because redistricting, any chances of new maps would have to happen pretty quickly before 2024.
Yeah.
How quickly could they do something on abortion rights in Wisconsin should she win?
Well, the case about the 1849 statute is actually in the courts now, and that will be decided by the Supreme Court, I think, in a matter of months. Were there a lawsuit to be brought to say we need to be about the process of redistricting? You could do that probably in the course of 9 or 12 months, certainly well before 2024. So that race is extremely important in an extremely important state. Wisconsin is a swing state.
It is Monday, the 27th of March of 2023, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam. Gunner the English Bulldog is our snoozing sous chef, and our daily special is River City Hash Mondays. Oh my, yes, what a weekend, huh? What about that Waco rally? Oh boy, I guess. You know, there was a rally that Reagan had when he began his foray into presidential politics. Actually, it wasn't when he began, but when he began in earnest. And that was going to Philadelphia, Mississippi, where, a few freedom riders just happened to be killed, and there you go. And it was all supposed to be a coincidence. Yeah, It was actually, as we know, a furthering of the Southern strategy. And Trump, come on, he's just in a long line in that legacy. So they deny it. Oh no, we had no idea. It was just a coincidence. Yeah, I think that was Dan Patrick saying that, when we made this venue available to Trump, we had no idea it was the 30-year anniversary. Give me a break. Every Texan knows that it's the 30-year anniversary of Waco, and they went to church and prayed over it yesterday. So please, I know that you think that the rest of us are as stupid as the people that vote for you, and there's a lot of them. But there's even more of us, and don't make us mad. It won't be good for you. It didn't work for Japan. Look what happened there when they awakened the terrible sleeping giant. This is what can happen, so be careful. Yep. And, something totally unrelated to that is on Saturday. Talk about a wild weekend. On Saturday, I was able to pick up my mom from the hospital and bring her home. And, she's not completely healed, and she won't ever be, but at least she's home. And that's a good thing. They got her stable enough, and I got to say it's a bit more work now, but that's okay. It's my mom. And we want her around, and there's no getting around it. She's slowing down. For real. We all are. It's just that we can quantify it quite a bit now with Mom. Her heart output. Now, normal is supposed to be somewhere around 49, 55, somewhere around there. That number. And my mom is more like around 25. It was as low as 20. Not very good at all. something happened with her potassium and magnesium. They had to balance that out again, so they got that all balanced out. The weird swelling in her legs diminished and went away. It actually got so bad that she was kind of weeping through her legs because there was nowhere for the fluid to go. And that's one of the normalcies of that, whether it's normal or not. Well, it's not. But it is a normal function when having, congestive heart failure. And that's what it was. So, keeping track of her weight in the morning. Any increase or decrease of more than 2 pounds is emergency room material. Keep track of her breathing. Now, I got to tell you, these fingertip oximeters, everything, we have several. I have one when I had COVID, but I actually determined that I wasn't going to rely on it anymore because it just seems so terribly and wildly inaccurate. And I've been reading a lot about these over-the-counter take-home fingertip oximeters not being very accurate. So one can determine the one's breathing by counting heart rates to 15, and then you multiply that number and you extrapolate what the breathing rate is. So it's not hard, it's old school, right? But we like our machines. In fact, weighing her, we have a digital scale for Mom, and she's had it for quite a while. But she took so long to get on it that the digital reader would read a wholly inaccurate number and quit. Shut off. Okay, we're done. You stepped on it long enough, but she only had like 1 foot on it and hadn't quite gotten the other foot on it. So, and I know my mom weighs more than 94 pounds. Okay, I know because I have to pick her up sometimes. She's more like around 130. A little lady, but she weighs 130. So we're supposed to keep track of increase or decrease in weight. So my sister yesterday, because I didn't really want to take Mom out and about yet, and she was a bit tired, so we just stayed at home. And I was tired too. I was worn out. But regardless, my sister had my nephew bring over an old-time scale with the kind that has the actual numbers and the little red hand that tells you what your weight is. So we'll use that and we'll get it. So that's good. Also supposed to have a follow-up since she was released on Saturday. She's supposed to have a follow-up with our primary within 3 days. But I got to tell you, trying to get them to answer their phone is impossible. And then you try to get a call back and an appointment. Well, it did say on the literature that was given to us as we checked Mom out that if we can't get the primary, then get a partner ASAP. So we're supposed to see some doctor for follow-up by tomorrow, which we will do. And then she has a pulmonary appointment in May. So ostensibly that's okay waiting that long, but we'll see. Maybe that fellow, that was just going to be a regular checkup. So he may want to see her sooner, and I probably should let him know. But regardless, it's great to have Mom back. Like I said, she needs a bit more help getting to the bathroom. If I could get her to the bathroom, she keeps wanting to. Am I divulging too much here? Anyway, she has a little buzzer, and I keep telling her, buzz me. Okay, let's not make a mess here. Buzz me, and I'll help you to the bathroom. And then also showering. She needs some help with that. Now, fortunately, we live in Oregon. So we have a bit of, what do they call it? A safety net? Oh, my. Safety net. That's really woke, isn't it? Yeah, thank God. Anyway, we'll be getting an occupational and physical therapist, one and the other. and they'll come once or twice a week, each of them. So, might have somebody here, 4 times a week, plus an RN who wants to have eyes on the ground, as I was told. And she or he will be coming once a week, and I believe it will be a she, as I think it might be the same person that came before for other things. But so we got that, and then Mom's insurance has, they've been calling us before this happened, reminding us about different kinds of nursing home care. And so I probably do need someone to help Mom take a shower. So try to get that going. I was told that I can get someone to come in and help clean the house. And I got to tell you, at my age, our age, that would be nice. Help cleaning this house? Yeah. One thing is in honor of my mom. She has a lot of doodads. Well, we have statuary, maybe I shouldn't say this because I don't want people coming in and breaking into the house and hitting us over the head, because if they try, it might be bad for them. But anyway, yeah, we have some like Remingtons and a few other bits of Western statuary. And quite heavy, by the way, so you're not really moving them around. But there's a bit of dusting involved. I don't know what it is about we old people and my mom. When we were younger, the idea of knickknacks and doodads on counters, that was verboten. And why? Because it makes it harder to clean. And now she totally embraces everything that makes it hard to clean. Could it be that she's not cleaning it anymore? Maybe. But she's still my mom. And if she wants to clutter up the tabletops, okay, I guess I'll let her. But it's a bit of a chore, making sure the dust is held at bay and not being collected by all the little knickknacks and doodads everywhere. Dust magnets. That's why I kind of like the Scandinavian design conceits. Not much there to collect dust except a bare countertop. A bare top. Everything's bare. Maybe you have like, a flower vase painted white with one lone red flower. Set at about, 110. 110 on the dial. Yeah, that's where they would put it. 110. Not at 1. Not at 2. 110. All right. Yeah, I actually sort of appreciated that because it was minimal and easy to clean. But she's got knickknacks and doodads, and they all mean something to her, and that's okay. Okay. So, I guess, though, we will be getting out and about today. She actually asked if wanted, here's a confession. It was my birthday yesterday. I know. Yeah. I used to like birthdays. Now I'm not so certain I do. Because talk about codifying finality. But anyway, it was my birthday yesterday. And she said, well, you don't need to cook. We can go out. But Mom's on a very restricted, I wouldn't say no salt diet, because she can get 2,000 micrograms of salt a day. And that's actually, when you add it up, that's quite a bit. And that can be filled up quite quickly with packaged and canned type foods. But you try to stay away from those and go fresh. But even, that said, there's a lot of foods that, and it was told in the literature, don't get things that have more than 140 micrograms of sodium in it. And you can find quite a bit that has considerably less. And so I have to keep track of that on a ledger. And of course, keep a track of her weight. And they didn't say anything about her blood pressure, but we tend to keep a ledger, a log of her blood pressure readings as well in the morning. Used to do blood pressures all the time, and then we decided that maybe that's not a good thing. It's sort of like getting on the scale and weighing yourself when you're trying to lose weight. Don't do it for a week. Don't do it every day. Certainly don't do it multiple times during the day. A lot of people want to do it every day. Well, we have to step on the scale every day because of the heart issue. But if you're trying to lose weight, sometimes it's good just to hide the scale. Don't step on it. Continue on with your diet. and then check it out, because sometimes the incremental losses can be discouraging because they're so incremental. But those incremental losses on a daily basis add up over a week, and you can actually see it and then feel good about yourself. All right. Maybe I should start a Noom. It's not about diet. It's about eating disorders. Okay, that's where the money is. Yep, fascism and eating disorders. That is where the big money is. One or the other, sometimes both, together. Yeah, I actually thought, speaking of which, I don't know how this has any bearing on any of it, but it just came to mind. At the Waco rally, it was almost like a deadhead tour. And when you think about it, a lot of people were probably deadheads of a particular stripe, and I don't know. A lot of old hippies turning into MAGAs? I don't think they were hippies to begin with. But they wanted to go on deadhead tours, but they were, they were squares as kids, and they're not going to do that. But now they're letting their freak flag fly. So yeah, at the Waco rally, there was they have all the different accoutrements of a fair, a concert. So you have T-shirts and foods and all sorts of stuff sold out of tents or from tents, pop-ups. And there was one that said they were selling grilled cheese sandwiches, water, and foot massages. And you could get a free foot massage if you got a grilled cheese sandwich. What? I don't know. Two things. I would not want to be the person massaging anyone's feet at that event. I don't know. It just seems I don't want it. But my next question is, do you get the cheese sandwich before or after the foot massage? And then the next thing came to mind is that, does it really matter at some point? Because how clean are those hands? I don't care if they're using disinfectant or ivermectin or what. They probably use some form of lye. We were told to clean our hands with lye. I don't think they clean their hands that well. I don't want a cheese sandwich from anybody doing foot massages. That's just me. I'm old-fashioned. Okay. Foot massage, grilled cheese sandwich. Here, have both. I don't know. Just totally weird. But that was the kind of wacko stuff that was happening at Waco. I know. That was so obvious. But hey, it's Monday. Speaking of which, oh my God, look at the time. We're just going on and on and on. I better get on with what we have in store for you, since we did take the time to curate a show for you last night. And what do we have in store for you here as we begin in the Bistro Cafe at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy? At the top, Jim Jordan's attacks on Alvin Bragg are the height of hypocrisy, and they are. On the rest of the menu, a federal judge ruled the Internet Archive is not a library. All right. Oregon wants to alter its long-held land use restrictions to lure chip makers to the state. Yeah, what's farmland and what's urban? And California looks to spend some Medicaid money on housing. After the break, we move to the chef's table, where Finland's leaders condemned an assault on a Jewish lawmaker who was attacked and punched in the face. And Ukraine called for an emergency meeting of the UN Security Council after Putin revealed plans to station tactical atomic weapons in Belarus. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. burned up so much time on this River City Hash Mondays, we'll forego the usuals, except to remind folks that the chat room link at our homepage at netrootsradio.com is monitored by Kelly Lincoln, and please become a recurring Patreon of Netroots Radio because it helps us pay our bills. And follow us on Twitter, Mastodon, and Spoutable at Netroots Radio. Tom takes care of that. Thanks, Tom. Follow me on Twitter, Mastodon, and Spoutable at Justice Putnam because I post the show notes and links diary on Daily Codes 10 minutes before showtime, and that's how you can get those show notes and links, by following me on Twitter, Mastodon, and Spoutable. And also pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, etc., etc., etc. Alrighty then, this first offering in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy River City Hash Mondays is by Hillel Atali from the Associated Press. A federal judge is cited with 4 publishers who sued an online archive over its unauthorized scanning of millions of copyrighted works and offering them free to the public. Judge John G. Cuttle, a U.S. District Court in Manhattan, ruled that the Internet Archive was producing derivative works that required permission of the copyright holder. The archive was not transforming the books in question into something new, but simply scanning them and lending them as ebooks from its website. An ebook recast from a print book is a paradigmatic example of a derivative work, Cuttle wrote. The archive, which announced it would appeal Friday's decision, has said its actions are protected by fair use laws and has long had a broader mission of making information widely available a common factor in legal cases involving online copyright. Libraries are more than the customer service departments for corporate database products. Internet Archive founder Brewster Call wrote in a blog post on Friday, "For democracy to thrive at global scale, libraries must be able to sustain their historic role in society, owning, preserving, and lending books. This ruling is a blow for libraries, readers, and authors, and we plan to appeal it." In June of 2020, Hachette Book Group, HarperCollins Publishers, John Wiley & Sons, and Penguin Random House sued in response to the archive's National Emergency Library, a broad expansion of its ebook lending service begun in the early weeks of the pandemic, when many physical libraries and bookstores had shut down. The publishers sought action against the emergency library and the archive's older and more limited program, Controlled Digital Lending. Works by Toni Morrison, J.D. Salinger, and Terry Pratchett were among the copyrighted texts publishers cited as being made available. While the Authors Guild was among those opposing the emergency library, some writers praised it. Historian Jill Lepore, in an essay published in March of 2020 in The New Yorker, encouraged readers who could not afford to buy books or otherwise were unable to find them during the pandemic to, quote, "please sign up, log on, and borrow from the Internet Archive." In a statement, the head of the trade group, the Association of American Publishers, praised the court decision as an unequivocal affirmation of the Copyright Act and respect for established precedent. In rejecting convoluted arguments from the defendant, the court has underscored the importance of authors, publishers, and lawful markets in a global society and global economy. Copying and distributing what is not yours is not innovative or even difficult, but it is wrong, said Maria Palante, the association's president and CEO. The Internet Archive, founded in 1996, is a nonprofit founded to build an Internet library, with the purpose of offering permanent access for researchers, historians, and scholars to historical collections that exist in digital format. Unlike traditional libraries, it does not acquire books directly through licensing deals with publishers, but through purchases and donations. The archive also includes millions of movies, TV shows, videos, audio recordings, and other materials, including Netroots Radio Show Archive at the Internet Archive. Andrew Zelski of the Associated Press brings us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, River City Hash Mondays. Aaron Nichols walked past rows of kale growing on his farm, his knee-high brown rubber boots speckled with some of the richest soil on earth, and gazed with concern towards fields in the distance. Just over the horizon loomed a gigantic building of the semiconductor chip maker Intel. For exactly 50 years, the farms and forests that ring Oregon's metropolitan centers have been protected from urban sprawl by the nation's first statewide law that placed growth boundaries on cities. Cities cannot expand beyond those borders unless they make a request and justify it. Approval by cities and counties can take months or even years. Larger expansions also need approval by the Oregon Department of Land Conservation and Development. But now, a bill being considered in Oregon's legislature could authorize the governor to unilaterally expand those boundaries as part of Oregon's quest to lure chip makers and provide land for them to build their factories. The measure would also provide $200 million in grants to those companies. Farmers and conservationists are deeply worried about the proposal and what it will mean for a state that cherishes its open spaces. State officials and lawmakers are eager to bring more semiconductor factories to Oregon, while billions of dollars of federal funding to promote the industry is available. They were stung by Intel's decision last year to build a massive $20 billion chip-making complex in Ohio and not in Oregon, where suitable zoned land is scarce. Oregon has its Silicon Forest, a counterpoint to California's Silicon Valley, and has been at the center of semiconductor research and production for decades. But Oregon is competing with other states to host multi-billion-dollar microchip factories called fabs. The competition heated up after Congress passed the CHIPS Act in 2022, providing $39 billion for companies constructing or expanding facilities that will manufacture semiconductors and those that will assemble, test, and package the chips, dramatically expanding semiconductor design and manufacturing in Oregon would create tens of thousands of high-paying construction jobs and thousands of manufacturing and supply chain jobs. The Oregon Semiconductor Competitiveness Task Force said it in a report in August. But the task force warned that Oregon needs more buildable industrial land near infrastructure, talented workers, and specialized suppliers to attract and retain semiconductor business, and called for urgent legislative action. Thanks to a former Republican governor, you can drive from many cities in Oregon and within minutes be in farm or ranch country, unlike many states where cities are surrounded by expanses of shopping centers and housing developments. Tom McCall, who served as Oregon's governor from 1967 to 1975, had successfully championed protections for Oregon beaches to ensure they remain public. In 1973, he urged lawmakers to push for a new tough land use law. Sagebrush subdivisions, coastal condominium, and the ravenous rampage of suburbia here in the Willamette Valley all threatened to mock Oregon's status as an environmental model of this nation, McCall said in a speech before the legislature in 1973. The legislature complied, passing a bill that established the nation's first statewide urban growth boundary policy. Brings us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. At the start of 2022, Thomas Marshall weighed 311 pounds. He had been hospitalized 10 times in 5 years, including 6 surgeries. He had an open wound on his left leg that refused to heal, made worse by living in a dirty, moldy house with 5 other people, 2 ball pythons, 4 chihuahuas, and a cage full of rats. More than a year later, Marshall has lost nearly 100 pounds. His wound is healed. His blood pressure has returned to normal levels. His foot, which had nerve damage, has improved to the point he goes on regular walks to the park. Lots of factors are at play in Marshall's dramatic turnaround, but the one he credits the most is finally having stable housing after the nonprofit Sacramento Covered helped him get a 1-bedroom, 500-square-foot apartment in a downtown high-rise. He has hardwood floors, white pine cabinets, and a glass jar on the counter filled with bitter honeys. To me, it's the most important 500 square feet I've ever had, he said. Living here just improved my well-being in every possible way. Marshall's story is part of a radical rethinking of the relationship between housing and healthcare in the U.S. For decades, Medicaid, the joint state and federal health insurance program for people with disabilities or low incomes, would only pay for medical expenses. But last year, the Biden administration gave Arizona and Oregon permission to use Medicaid money for housing, a nod to reams of research showing people in stable housing are healthier. Now, California wants to join those states, building on the success of programs like the one that got Marshall his housing. Governor Gavin Newsom has proposed spending more than $100 million per year in the state's Medicaid program to pay for up to 6 months of housing for people who are at risk becoming homeless and coming out of prison or foster care, or are at risk for hospitalization or emergency room visits. It would be the biggest test yet of using Medicaid money for housing. California has the largest Medicaid program with more than 13 million patients, or about a third of the state's population. California has also nearly a third of the nation's homeless population. It's a huge step towards breaking down the silos that have gotten in the way of taking care of the whole person rather than limb by limb and illness by illness, said Anthony Wright, Executive Director of Health Access California, a consumer advocacy group. It would also be an expensive step. California is expected to have a $22.5 billion budget deficit this year, and it could get bigger in years to come. Meanwhile, the state's Medicaid spending is projected to increase by $2.5 billion over the next 3 years. California experimented with using Medicaid money for some housing-related expenses in 2016 when it launched a pilot project in 26 counties. While Medicaid did not pay for rent, it did pay for things like security deposits and furniture. All right, you can read the rest of that article and all of the articles at the show notes and links diary provided for you on various social media platforms. So do check that out. And why don't we now go to our break? And when we get back from that break, we will go through weather from around the world, and we will finish up with the stories that we've curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Take Two Movie Review. I'm Mike Friend. This week, Now We Take Manhattan. There's an arc to franchises like the Scream series. Legendary director Wes Craven, who hasn't been involved in the last couple, set out in 1996 to make a genuinely scary slasher flick, but an aware one with a crisp script and some genre self-deprecation that gave it real comic bite. Of course, slasher films weren't new 27 years ago either, and the original Scream stood out. As such franchises go on, though, we see the arc of attention mission creep into satisfying a market for devotees' interest in the characters, which can be okay if the characters are compelling and nuanced, then eventually into servicing iconic features of the earlier movies. It would seem that with Scream 6, the arc is complete. Not that there aren't going to be more of them. We have many of the non-previously killed-off characters returning, with updated backstories. How interesting they are is likely subjective, based on how into the series you are. The core four, as they call themselves, certainly check off boxes for diversity, which may or may not be connected to the venue change from Woodsboro to what's supposed to be New York City, though I suspect that's more something from a list of how can we make this look different this time, sort of like putting a shotgun in the Ghostface's hands. Back are snippets from the old slasher horror pics, a wonderful self-deprecating monologue, this time from Mindy, about the mechanics of the franchise, which might contain a key to solving the mystery, though it could be confused with the business model. But the ultimate mature franchise sign here is the venue for the blood-spattered finale, a derelict movie theater fixed up as a shrine to the earlier Ghostfaces. If you've been following along since the beginning, Scream 6 is for you. Otherwise, well, this has been Take Two Movie Review. I'm Mike Friend. Catch up with us at TakeTwoMovieReview.com and feed us back on our channel on YouTube.
Hi, I'm Tom Hartman, and since you're listening to netrootsradio.com, show your progressive side and go to the donate button on the bottom of the homepage. It's progressives like you who power Netroots Radio and keep the progressive message beaming everywhere 24 hours a day. Just go to our donate button at the bottom of netrootsradio.com. Thank you for keeping progressive radio at full power.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 2002. That was the day that the U.S. Supreme Court handed down its decision in the case Hoffman Plastic Compound Incorporated versus the National Labor Relations Board. This case had profound importance for undocumented workers in the United States. The conflict began 14 years before, as the United Cork Linoleum and Plastic Workers of America began an organizing drive at Hoffman. The California company made plastic pipeworks. Hoffman retaliated by firing all the employees that supported the union. One of those fired was Jose Castro, an undocumented worker. The fired workers took their case to the National Labor Relations Board, where they won. The board ruled that the company had to provide back pay for the workers it had unfairly fired. This ruling included Castro. The company decided to fight the decision, and the case wound its way through the courts for a decade. Finally, it arrived on the Supreme Court docket. The highest court in the land ruled in favor of the company in a 5-4 decision. It ruled that as an undocumented worker, Castro could not claim back pay. Writing for the dissent, Justice Stephen Breyer warned that the decision, quote, might very well increase the strength of this magnetic force of undocumented migration. If employers do not worry about the penalties for breaking the law that protect workers, they might be more likely to hire undocumented labor. 10 years after the case, an article in the Princeton Law Review called the decision, quote, a powerful legal symbol of exclusion of immigrant workers. Trying to divide the workforce has long been a tactic of owners determined to break the power of labor.
Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, River City Ash Mondays. We always begin weather from around the world along the banks of the Rogue River in the Rogue River Valley of southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 30 degrees Fahrenheit. Expecting highs only in the low 40s, partly cloudy this morning. Oh, we are under a winter weather advisory, by the way. Increasing clouds later on this morning with periods of showers. Winds out of the east-southeast at 5 to 10 miles per hour, and expecting about a quarter inch of rain today. And then cloudy with periods of rain overnight, lows in the mid-30s, winds out of the east at 5 to 10 miles an hour, and expecting over a half inch of rain tonight, and then a steady rain in the morning. Showers continuing in the afternoon, highs in the upper 40s, winds out of the east-southeast at 5 to 10 miles per hour, bringing with it tomorrow during the day another quarter inch of rain, with more in the offing as we get through the week. Pollen is still rated none here in our little town of Rogue River. The air quality index for the region is good at 23 parts per million, and that daytime UV index is in the moderate range, though it has ticked down to level 3. Barometric pressure is falling at 30.23 inches. Visibility is up to 10 miles, and relative humidity is at 90%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world. London is 50 degrees and mostly cloudy. Paris is 50 degrees and fair. Rome is 57 with rain. Kyiv is 57 and mostly cloudy. Kabul is 53 and mostly cloudy. Hong Kong is 63 and partly cloudy. Tokyo is 52 degrees with rain. Sydney, Australia is 70 degrees and mostly cloudy. San Francisco, California is 46 degrees and fair with a flood watch. And New York is 58 degrees Fahrenheit and sunny. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world. Jerry Tanner of the Associated Press brings us this first amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, River City Hash Mondays. Finland's leaders strongly condemned an assault on a Jewish lawmaker who was assaulted and punched in the face Saturday while campaigning for the country's April 2nd general election. President Niinisto tweeted that Saturday's physical attack on veteran conservative politician Ben Zyskowicz, age 68, was a cowardly act that delivered a blow to Finnish democracy. Zyskowicz told Finnish media that a large man who appeared to be between the ages of 30 and 40 confronted him at a metro station in Helsinki, and that's the capital city that he represents. The man started yelling, blaming him for Finland's decision to join NATO and hurling anti-Semitic insults. And he added that the perpetrator also threatened to kill him and push him onto the subway tracks. The confrontation turned into a scuffle, and Zyskowicz reported he was hit in the face and fell on the ground, suffering bruises, scratches, and other minor injuries. Police later apprehended a suspect. Zyskowicz, who has served in Finland's parliament for over 40 years and is one of the most visible representatives of Finland's Jewish community. The lawmaker told Helsingin Sanomat, which is a newspaper there in Finland, he thinks his assailant's motive was political. Zyskowicz is a member of the center-right National Coalition Party, which polls predict is in a position to receive the most votes in the upcoming election. The party has advocated for Finland to seek NATO membership for over 20 years. Under no circumstances must physically attacking candidates become part of Finnish society, not even as an entirely marginal phenomenon, Zyskowicz told the newspaper. Political violence is extremely rare in Finland, a nation of 5.5 million where lawmakers and government ministers regularly move around cafes, markets, and shopping centers without guards while campaigning, sometimes getting around on public transportation.
Je te donne ce mon amour pour la vie entière, la promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle, c'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer, mes automnes quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers.
Carl Ritter of the Associated Press brings us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Ukraine's government yesterday, Sunday, called for an emergency meeting of the UN Security Council to counter the Kremlin's nuclear blackmail after Putin revealed plans to station tactical atomic weapons in Belarus. One Ukrainian official said Russia took Belarus as a nuclear hostage, further heightening tensions. An explosion deep inside Russia wounded 3 people yesterday, Sunday. Russian authorities blamed a Ukrainian drone for the blast, which damaged residential buildings in a town just 110 miles south of Moscow. Russia has said the plan to station tactical nuke weapons in Belarus comes in response to the West's increasing military support for Ukraine. Putin announced the plan in a TV interview that aired on Saturday, saying it was triggered by a UK decision this past week to provide Ukraine with armor-piercing rounds containing depleted uranium. Putin argued that by deploying its tactical nuke weapons in Belarus, Russia was following the lead of the United States. He noted that Washington has nuclear weapons based in Belgium, Germany, Italy, the Netherlands, and Turkey. That's only because we're exceptional. Okay, you should know that. We are doing what they are doing for decades, stationing them in certain allied countries, preparing the launch platforms and training their crews, Putin said in a very terrible accent. Ukraine's foreign ministry condemned the move in a statement on Sunday and demanded an emergency meeting of the UN Security Council. Ukraine has not commented on Sunday's explosion inside Russia. It left a crater about 50 feet in diameter and 16 feet deep, according to media reports. Russian state news agency TASS reported authorities identified the drone as a Ukrainian Tu-141. The Soviet-era drone was introduced in Ukraine in 2014 and has a range of about 620 miles. Similar drone attacks have been common during the war, although Ukraine hardly ever acknowledges responsibility. On Monday, Russia said Ukrainian drones attacked civilian facilities in the town of Donetsk in Russian-annexed Crimea. Ukraine's military said several Russian cruise missiles were destroyed, but did not specifically claim responsibility. Well, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day. But you do know Netroots Radio broadcasts on, and we will meet up here tomorrow for Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks. And we will meet up here tomorrow, right here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. À fleurs, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.